Welcome to Frankly Speaking with Sendra D, where we dive deeply and help you wake up to the essence of what it means to live a real, authentic, affluent life. Beyond the balance sheets, the bank accounts, the private jets, the political offices, into the realm of inner wealth and personal power. I'm Sendra D, your companion guide on this trajectory of truthful self-mastery as we celebrate your individuality and your sovereignty. Welcome to another fantastic episode of Frankly Speaking with Sendra D. I have with me a repeat guest, the one you love so much. I've gotten so many wonderful comments about Lieutenant Colonel Jason Pike. And of course, you know, I love soldiers. My daddy was a soldier. People who serve have a spirit about themselves, who are unique at their core and truly inspire me. So, of course, if you've watched the previous episode of Lieutenant Colonel Jason Pike, you may already know a bit of his background. But so they'll be shorter this time. And I will let him tell you more about who he is. But Lieutenant Colonel Jason Pike agreed to join me today on this episode so that we could share the good news with you. You know, I love literary pieces because it sort of solidifies the journey and what a journey he's had. So just to give you a little background, if you've not heard about him before, he grew up immersed in nature through hunting, fishing, and other outdoor activities, first in Georgia and later in Fingerville, South Carolina. He is a graduate at Clemson University, where he earned 2 master's degrees. He served in the U.S. Army from 1982 to 2014, which encompassed several deployments, including Korea, El Salvador, Afghanistan, where he was awarded a Bronze Star, and Germany. He was also assigned to the 10th Special Forces Group in 1992. The interview includes numerous stories, including Lieutenant Colonel Pike's experience, challenges, and opportunities in the armed forces, and are highlighted by themes of determination and perseverance. In 2023, he published a memoir of his early life in the military and his military career titled A Soldier Against All Odds. So that was the first episode that was released. And he is a decorated combat veteran with multiple deployment, as I said. Well, and oh God, I don't want to start telling you. So why don't you tell us? So first of all, welcome again. Why don't you tell us what the fill in the blank as to what I didn't mention about your journey as far as your decorations, you know, how you got your start and the catalyst for getting you to where you are.
It was 31 years in the Army, and 9 of those years were overseas in 5 different countries around the globe. So I have served in the military in many places around outside of America. And it was basically that first book, A Soldier Against All Odds, was a survival, perseverance of going from age 17 with learning disabilities and rising up through the ranks. And that first book, everybody was asking about the worst experience of 31 years. And you would think it would be Afghanistan, but it was not. It was actually a toxic workplace, a toxic work environment with supervisors that were crazy as hell. And that led me to get my third book out, which was Leading Through the Crossfire, how to navigate a toxic work environment. Well, what to do in a wicked workplace. That's the most stressful. That's where the post-traumatic stuff went on. That's where it was bad, very bad. So that's why I wrote this third book. And it's just not, this is not a bitch session. It's like, here's other people, there's other veteran stories out there, police as well as corporate America, and what they do and how they handle it in the storytelling style that I write about. Audiobook is coming out in October in my voice, the one and only, and I'll have that out in October. So yeah.
Fantastic. So I love talking to you. You are truly a blessing to this planet, you know, and some, you know, souls come here to harm, but you are one of these people who help others find their voices, because you do a lot of work with veterans who have been injured. And, you know, in our last episode, you talked about, you know, one of the purposes that you have that you feel that you have been, assigned is to help others find, a purpose after what do you call it? After they return home. So that said, I want to talk a bit about where you are now. You did write another book, and the title of the book is Leading Through the Crossfire, a Veteran's Blueprint for Navigating Toxic Work Environment. I mean, just take the veteran out, just say human. Let's just I'm rewriting your title.
Anybody,
Leading
yeah.
Through the Crossfire, a human blueprint for navigating toxic work environment. And I'm going to take work out too and just put toxic environment. It's just one big umbrella of, of just, general, because we all go through it. So tell me, first of all, what inspired you to write this book? What was the inspiration behind this?
It's to get these stories out that were my worst experiences in the military. And it wasn't being shot at, it wasn't being blown up, but I went ahead and I asked other people to come on and help me out as far as tell me your story as well and put it out there. And we had to change a lot of people's names. There's a 4-star general that I won't say the name to, that's in the book, that's from somebody else's deep, dark time as a toxic leader. But we had to navigate those sensitive areas through the book. It took about a year, but I developed a relationship with my publisher very well and the ghostwriter. And so it was not as bad as that first book coming out with. So, yeah.
What do you mean it wasn't as bad? As you telling the truth about people?
I had developed a relationship in the literary world with publishers, with my ghostwriter. We've already have a book out, matter of fact, 2 books out. And so I was in the mode to write much better than the first time, because the first time, you understand, I'm vomiting it out on the first time. This is going to be my 3rd time vomiting it out, and also gathering other people's stories to help them to gain perspective. So I've got some active duty people in here, which and some retired colonels that are in here talking about it, and so that helps the story as far as the credibility.
Yeah, absolutely. And it goes on both sides. And I did a previous episode, so, if you haven't listened to that episode yet, it's about the female narcissist being on rise, because in the military we have more and more women joining and also rising through the ranks of leadership. And can I just say, narcissism really, in my understanding of it, so we all traumatized out here. We're all having to recover from something, right? I'm very open about my journey of recovery, which is all based in the trauma, paradigm. But what happens is a lot of women and men push this trauma down, and they focus on their intellect and not the heart. Because if you focus on your heart, the emotions are going to come out. But the intellect, the cerebral, you just focus on that and you unleash into the world. You're just like, I'm smart, I'm beautiful, whatever it is in your mind that makes you think you're better than everybody else. I'm smart. I'm just going to bypass everybody. Get out of my way. I'm going to get to where I'm going. And what happens with that journey is that you end up the people end up spilling their trauma onto other people, which means that's what they call projection. And these people come into leadership, and you can explain to me the phenomenon and how you touch on that on the top in your book. They come into the leadership with all their wounds, all their trauma, pushing it down because they want to be perfect. That's the other thing narcissism does. And then when they get triggered, they blame other people, and then they want to take you down. So that's what creates a toxic environment. They are determined to make you pay for their pain. So talk to me about how you were able to express that and translate that from the military so that people can understand what the dynamic, how you were able to discern that it was toxic, first of all.
Well, there's no empathy at all. There's no empathy to the organization or to the soldier or to the people below. So if you have a boss, a supervisor who they may not even be around. They might be just totally incompetent. And one of my supervisors was not ever, she came in at 3:00 in the afternoon, which is actually a good thing because she was always on fire, always mad about something. And I was like, God almighty, how can every day be so pissed pissed off at everybody. And so they destroy people's lives and their families' lives. So how do you know you're in it when there are a narcissist? They're all about themselves, and they're all about promoting themselves into the organization. And many times they're not available, and sometimes you don't want to be around them or be available to them because it's just always crazy about something. So that's kind of what I go through, and I go through those traits and what to do about it. A lot of people want to fight it, and without reading the book, my opinion after writing the book, I think you need to get the hell out of the organization if you can, because they have a mental problem. It is
mental illness. It is absolutely, without a doubt, mental illness. And it's under the umbrella of personality disorder. But go ahead.
Yeah, they have a narcissistic personality disorder, and it's all about them and self-promotion and no empathy at all. And if you can, I wasn't in a place to move, but a lot of people want to fight it and bring it up to human resources or to quality control. You can do that, but if you do that, you better have your ducks in a row. You better have documents over a period of time, the good, the bad, and the ugly of a period of time. Hopefully you've got another coworker that will get on board with you and help write it down and give it to quality control, human resources, or the chaplain or whoever will have that ear for you. You got to be careful in that, because they may be all tied up in that toxic leadership too. And so those are things you might want to think about before you ring the bell. It's called, what is it? The whistleblower, what have you. Yeah. But that's something that, in my opinion, probably need to leave. I just suffered quietly, because how do you write down things? You're surviving day to day just to go to work. This is how bad it is. And how can you write all those details out, because you're reliving it and you're in a trauma situation? It's kind of difficult. It'd be better if you can get out of there or move to another place in the organization or to another workplace. Yeah.
Well, absolutely. Because having gone through it myself, I've been pretty much in corporate America most of my adult life, but in my own business part of that time. But even if you're not in a corporate environment and you're in your own business, you bump heads with people who are just toxic, and it creates a toxic relationship. So for you, because you sound like you're from Texas, you were surrounded by family, you had a very close relationship with your father, if I remember, what we talked about last time. And you saw, people who were trying to be pillars of their community, really leading in a very, exemplary way. And then you come to like the height of power, and then you see all this. It's chaotic, right? Because it's not orderly, because military is supposed to be law and order, right? And they take an oath to serve and no drama. That's why everybody, my dad was so stoic. He could not, he had no idea what was coming. I couldn't stop talking, but he was just like this. But at the end of the day, you are dealing with people who refuse to tap into within, because it's not encouraged. So when you went to human resources, how did they respond to you in your concerns? We're not going to call them complaints. We're going to just call them concerns.
I didn't go to human resources. I went to the chaplain and talked to the chaplain.
Okay.
To gain perspective, because they've got a different eye on things. They monitor the morale of the health of the soldiers. And so he gave me some insight that this person is a problem. And it helps me to know that I'm just not in my mind that way. I never did go and seek retribution through any type of chain of command or quality control or human resources. I suffered in silence and waited it out for the most, which is not a good thing. It's not a healthy thing. I relied on my family, my friends, the chaplain, mental health support. I worked out like a crazy animal. I was probably the most physically fit at that time, because I put my energy out into the machines, into the weights, and I was doing expert 300 on the physical fitness test. Whatever it took to get it out. And I did an emotional elliptical machine, and I vomited it out while I was either running or on the machine. And I found that through experiment to be helpful. Everybody has their ways. Maybe you like to meditate, maybe you want to pray, whatever you want to do, yoga, what have you. But that's how I did it, and everyone's going to find their way. But in hindsight, I shouldn't even have took that damn job over there. But I'm thinking, how could I have prevented it? And unless I went over to the garrison and saw the environment, I knew I was walking into in the very beginning. I knew something was going to happen because I could see how people were very, very quiet and very, very nervous, and they look different. And I said, oh my God, there's something going on here. And so those were the things of how I handled it. My father, I talked to him a lot, and my wife, my daughter, well, not my daughter, she was too small, but the chaplain, mental health. Mm-hmm.
Well, that's fantastic. So give me an example of what was the biggest hurdle or the experience that you had with them. Give me, because I know we touched a little bit about that, and how they were exerting their, abusing their authority, abusing their power to sort of crush you and to ensure that you knew who was in charge. So one of the things you had mentioned was they created some charges against you. Can you tell the audience a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so there was two different things that went on that I can talk about. There's a lot of crazy, but the first charge was that I was a pedophile. I did go to the elementary school, eat lunch with my daughter. I was a very playful, wild, and crazy father at that fun phase of childhood, chasing kids and things. I did that. And they wanted to throw a rumor. That was only a rumor. And that went out through the garrison, and then that just went away. But the next year, they came back with something even better. Then I became a spy. I went through Criminal Investigation Division and Military Intelligence. They charged me with passing documents to foreign nationals. Who were they? Hell, I don't know, Vietnamese or Korean or whatever, but they just said it's foreign. We believe that you're breaching security with passing on documents. And so therefore I went under investigation, false investigation, and nothing, but I never went to court. I never went to an article hearing on that second charge. See, when I thought I was going to be charged with pedophile, but they said, no, it was totally different. It was being a spy. And so that sort of caught me off guard. And I'm thinking, what that? And this was much more serious because you had the different organizations there monitoring me. And that went on for another year and a half, 2 years. And it was a hard time to get through. Eventually I transferred. I moved away, and then once I moved away, nothing ever happened. And that was the only time anything ever happened, was right there in that damn office. Yeah.
Unbelievable, incredible, toxic people just, and I'm a flawed person. I mean, I'm not saying that I've had my perfect life, but my efforting is toward being better, not worse. The difference between toxic people and people who are eager to be on the opposite side of the coin is you check in, you find out how am I doing today? Am I doing a better person? Am I doing evil here? But on the other side of that, so you were in Korea at the time and you just got transferred. There was never an apology, never a letter exonerating you. It was just poof, it went away. It never happened.
And that's the paranoia with me, it went on for years afterwards because I kept thinking somebody's going to get me. But because no one ever said it's over, and no one ever said nothing ever happened. And I had to say, well, I guess it's over now, even though I went off to Afghanistan, and I'm still thinking something might happen with that damn thing, but nothing ever did. And that's what bothered me a lot. No one said, I apologize, this was false. We didn't find anything on you. I wish they would have said that to give some closure to me, but that never happened.
Incredible. So I want to get you into the solution, right? So we know the problem. I'm a mediator. I love talking about solutions, resolving things. So the solution, I know, which is a topic that I'm passionate about, that's emotional intelligence. That's what we've been talking about, checking in, really measuring the depth of understanding from another perspective, not understanding that I don't always have all the answers. Let me go look around to see if possibly someone else or something else could guide me in another direction. But that's the problem. Toxic people, narcissism, personality disordered individuals, they never check in. They don't believe that what they're thinking is flawed in any way. They've convinced themselves and others, for the most part, that they're always right. And there's no room for negotiation. Their way is the only way. So that's the difference between emotional intelligence. So I want to talk to you about how, and I feel that about you, becoming that emotional, intelligent leader, someone who, because they've gone through the fire, and I was talking to someone earlier and I was talking about being a phoenix rising from the ashes, coming out and rising through the fires and the ashes as a phoenix because you were determined to come through it in the best way possible. Um, Talk to me about how did you develop that being different and not going an eye for an eye and just trying to be a bit more of a very what do you call it, wise person?
Talking to people, getting different perspectives of the situation that I'm in, and the chaplain, the mental health, and that I am not all crazy like I am. I mean, yeah, I have my own flaws and things, but I haven't done anything criminal. I haven't done anything with children, and so I gained it through other people and their input to me as true feedback. And that there were some other people who told me, Jason, this thing is crazy. And so if you get that self-talk from other people telling you that, then you think, okay, well, it's not all me. I'm not the one going crazy here, and it's somebody else. But that's kind of how I gained my emotional intelligence. Is that this is the only time it's ever had, and I kind of knew that it was going to happen when I saw the environment, and it's a feeling. Sometimes you feel that. I don't know. We're animals in many ways, and you can just feel the office environment. And sometimes I think the only way I would have known, and I'm pretty good at foresight, in other words, looking down the road for things. But the only way I could have judged that situation was to walk in that office beforehand and understood it, and take the assignment or take the job. Well, you just go and talk to people and see what's going on, and then you might come away. I don't want to go there, but
Right.
You start yourself. What could I? Well, it happened, and I just dealt with it the best I could with the available resources that were there. I did write things down, but it was just so hard to write details down because I'm in a state. There's no doubt I couldn't do my job.
Right.
I was in a state of eyes popping out of my head and looking and hearing. My hearing increased, my smelling, my eyesight's because I'm surviving, and I'm looking for any cue that they might be coming to get me, and that
Right.
occurred. And that stayed afterwards as well. Yeah.
So at the time, did you know that term emotional intelligence? Because that seems to be just in the last few years that it's become a bit more mainstream, if you want. It's not yet. I think for those of us who choose to be in that space, we are endeavoring to bring more awareness to it. But so when you came through it, and of course you were a little bit more how can I say, uh, not exposed, but you had gone through much more than, of course. So did you feel that you had been prepared for this? Did they give you tools in the military to prepare you for such conflicts at that time?
No, I was not. I was completely blindsided on this situation. It was a sucker punch from hell. And yeah, I thought, once I was moving out of there and they're telling me I'm going to Afghanistan, my revenge was to do as well as I could.
Right.
Success would be my best revenge.
Absolutely.
And that's what I focused on with Afghanistan. I got my t-shirt came from Afghanistan, but I went over there and I did the best I could. If I could have gone and killed the Taliban myself, I would have done it. I was out in many ways. When I was in the war zone, I was fighting the battle of toxic, in Korea, of the toxic work environment, and I didn't care. I wanted to die in war. This is the way to go. And I even prayed to die in war because that's how I thought, you know what? I'll get the Medal of Honor. They'll kill me. I'll kill them. And hey, I'll be successful and I'll show them. And that's my mindset. Was not a good mindset. We did very well in Afghanistan, but that's kind of how I was looking at it, to succeed down the road.
Yeah, because it's such a pressured environment. You just want out. Excuse me. You just want out, and sometimes you think about death may be an exit strategy, right? Because the pain is so strong when you're dealing with such situations where you feel so powerless. You feel that these people are in authority figures, and that can range from in a parent household or a spousal situation, domestic violence. I mean, these type of scenarios can show up anywhere. So deep inside, so you were praying, because I know you're a very spiritual man, and you were, talking to the chaplain. So at some point you knew it was over, and I feel like at that point you made a decision to help others come through this, which is probably started writing the book before you even wrote the book, right? So how long ago was this experience? And, give us a time frame from then until now, because that's really when that book started.
Yeah, so the toxic work environment occurred from 2007 to about 2010. I went to Afghanistan the following right after 2011. All right, and then I retired 2014. That's when I started putting pen to paper. This is a hell of a story. It's already a hell of a story even before this, but once this occurred, I said, this is a hell of a story, and I could put everything together on that first book. I mean, a soldier against all odds, it seems like I was always against the odds, and that's what prompted me to go ahead and write the story and put it out. I had to talk to spiritual people. I had to talk to the mental health anyway, and I was getting it out there in different routes. EMDR was one of the routes and
Right.
methods, and so I just said, well, I gotta get me a ghostwriter to help me out because I failed English, and I have to work on my English skills. But so and that's kind of how I worked the book and put the stories together. Mm-hmm.
So that was back in the early 2000s, or mid 2000s. But talk about now, because you're in touch with veterans. Are they now? It's a military a bit more forthcoming with their assistant when people are going through such situations. Are there methods in place to assist people who are in uniform and out of uniform? Because there are, a lot of uniform people going into corporate America and they repeat the cycle. It's the same situation. So are there, for veterans, strategies in place, or offices and staff who can come forth and help them go process this kind of experience? Do they
Oh yeah.
have that right now?
You can go to, I think the chaplain, they have certain rights. The chaplain, wherever their spiritual body is, they have certain
Mhm.
rights and authorities that are different in the military. The inspector general, it's an IG, it's a complaint. It's not necessarily you're going to get an it's somewhere where you can throw things out and get another perspective. Mental health, of course, any of your medical people and mental health, talk to them and ask them things. So whatever you're comfortable with, I tried. I kind of looked at everything that I had, brought it together, and to give me some perspective on just how to survive it, how to push forward with it. I didn't go through the complaint process with the inspector general. Or through the human resource. I didn't do that. I just sort of looked at my own self and said, there will be a day where I will leave, and so or move away, and that's
Mhm.
going to be my end date. That's kind of how I focused on.
So tell me, someone comes to you now, they said they're going through the exact same thing you're going through. What do you tell them?
It's your health is going to be affected, so I recommend that you try to transfer. I was not in a position to transfer. I did look at transferring, just transferring in the organization or quitting. If you don't have many years in, you could quit and come back to another. I know that you have to take your finances and things of that nature into effect, but I think if it's going to affect your health negatively over a period of time, if that supervisor, that toxic, it ain't going, if it's not going anywhere, then you need to go. You're not going to change these people. They're going to stay that way. And you might think, well, that's quitting, but it's about your health and your family. It's more than, and you might do something stupid like try to kill them or kill yourselves because you're at that level of health problems. And so, those are some things you need to think about. A lot of people want to fight it, and they want to, and if you do, you better have your ducks in order because they will find you either now or later, and they won't stop.
Absolutely.
These people they will hunt you down. And I'm retired now, so and they're retired too. So I waited for a period of years until I published the book. So that's kind of my thoughts on that. Mm-hmm.
So, of course, it affects morale. And we know it's been, widely reported that there's an increase in suicides in veterans and enlisted, soldiers and officers. So would you say that that toxic environment in the military is causing a lot of these suicides?
Yes, and it's in all the organizations. Toxicity, people leave, people leave managers, they don't leave the company in many ways. And so, yes, I think that the suicide rate is affected with toxicity, mental. So some people, I know some veterans didn't want to come onto this book because they're still recovering from their toxic situation. And yes, so a lot of the junior people who don't have many years in, they leave the Army real fast. And a lot of those officers are really good officers. They leave because of bad bosses. Wicked workplaces is why they leave. They don't leave the Army because they don't like the Army. They don't, it's usually a supervisor or an assignment, bad assignments they've had.
Yeah, no, I'm so sorry that you had to go through that, and everyone that's going through it. My heart breaks, and I hope you are finding the support that you need. But I want to get back to how do you foster a more positive environment? How do you develop that emotional intelligence that can prevent these experiences from happening? Because of course, I do feel that we do need an armed force, we do need military. But what happens is, we hear when these people are deployed, they do all sorts of crazy things in the local community. So there needs to be better strategies, better systems in place for people, whether they are deployed or whether they're at home. So how do you develop and foster such a more, how can I say, emotionally intelligent environment?
Mental health, they're coming more and more and more into mental health and bringing the post-traumatic stress of situations. It just keeps, I see it all the time throughout, and people coming forward that are leaders saying, yeah, I have a problem. I have a post-traumatic problem. And and then when you look up and you see other people saying, yeah, they got a problem, they're going to go to mental health or the chaplain, then you'll be more inclined to do that and get therapy, get a different perspective. That would be emotional intelligence that occurs. And that's occurring a lot more and more in the military.
So do they have support groups now? And because that are kept, because I know in the recovery community, you say they have a thing that says what you hear here stays here. So is there such a support group when you have these type of situations that people can go through and share openly? Or do they have to just suffer alone in that sense?
For the most part, they go to mental health. This is a privacy type of a situation where there's, they have to be confidential in these things, and so that's would be the places they would go to, and they're wanting the soldiers to go there. They're wanting them to go to mental health, and it's not as ostracized as it was when I went in. So when I went in, it was like, that's, you don't say anything, but now they're promoting it. Yeah, mental health much more.
Fantastic.
Too many people have died. I mean, these people have been killing themselves for, over 20 something a day.
You said 20 per day?
Yeah, over 20 a day. There's been more suicides that are here in America, not related to all the wars since 9/11. So we have more soldiers killing themselves than all those two wars, like Afghanistan and Iraq combined.
Than dying while being deployed.
Wow,
That is very sad to hear. And my heart goes out to their families, and also you must have lost many, many friends and colleagues. But I want to talk about what are some of the red flags and behaviors in the leadership that someone can say, because you know what, I know for me, I didn't even know what it was until I knew what it was, because you see people, and sometimes when you're around so many people who are toxic, you don't even know that it's not the norm. I actually thought I was the problem, but then you start to wake up and you're like, oh, I'm not the problem, it's them. So what are the red flags for you? At what point do you know that that's just off?
Their self-promotion, they steal credit. If you do something, they steal the credit. They could be a micromanager. In other words, everything has to be micromanaged out. Everything. They don't trust you. They have insecurity problems. Maybe they're just not available to you at all. So they're always either gone or too busy. Get away, come back later, or whatever. And you're like, what the hell? So they're self-interested. They're self-absorbed into things. One of my supervisors, we didn't know where she was at during the day. I mean, like, where is she at? I don't know where she's at. And I rode my bicycle. I rode bicycles and stuff. And I could see that her car was outside of her house, but what the hell she's doing? She's not going to work, which was kind of a good thing in many ways. And so they may not even they may have a bully. I mean, just like that schoolyard bully, they may have that persona of a bully. Kissing up, but kicking down is another thing. If they're kissing up all the time and then they're kicking down, that might be a red flag as well.
Well, that's great. Well, I hope the listeners understand now a little bit more. And sometimes it's very hard for people to understand that dynamic if they haven't gone through it. But also sometimes when they hear this, and this is why I'm doing this show, and I'm speaking today with Lieutenant Colonel Jason Pike, and who and I have spoken before on the topic of leadership, because he was a leader in the military. But unless you've gone through it, you don't know what it is. But also, if you have a friend or a family member who's going through it and they tell you, because I remember when my brother was going through his situation before he passed, he was in a toxic workplace. I actually smiled and I was like, oh, you're sometimes you're a little too, I don't know what I said, but I dismissed it, what he was saying to me. And he passed on, I think it was like maybe a month later, because he was so stressed out from his work environment. He already had a pre-existing condition, but the stressing out of the condition of the workplace and his boss, and he was living with a toxic wife. So those things compiled together can lead, people to just say, I'm out. I'm just done here. But I want to bring you back to the solution again. So how can individuals rebuild the confidence in their sense of purpose after such an experience? Because, I know for me, I had to grind, I had to like dig in and say, oh my Lord, okay, what doesn't break me makes you stronger, but show me the strength. How can people do that?
Oh, with me, what I did was I physically worked out and I would do things. I went through a series of mental health procedures. Like when you go to a restaurant, you have a menu, and many of these mental health, it's not all about counseling. It could be EMDR, it could be meditation, it could be yoga, it could be putting the alpha stem on you. That's a device that you can use on your ears. It could be, to me, walking dogs and running outside and being out of doors, away from devices. The hot cold therapy, I love that stuff. I mean, you get into a sauna and then you jump into an ice bath. It sounds crazy, but I'm crazy anyway. But that does help me out a lot. It lowers down the blood pressure. You find, like, you look at a menu of option, and it might not be one fit. It might take one. You might have to play around with something that's going to help you. And they may say do this, but you like to do something else. So that's how I would approach that, and understand it's a big world of therapy out there, and it's not just one size fits all.
I agree. And one of the things I tell people when they're experiencing trauma in adulthood is I tell them to go back to the childhood and see if there was anything there that they missed and they forgot or they repressed. Because sometimes many times those situations are triggering something that was already existence. I'm not saying that's your case, but for me, in my adult life, I had to go back and remember, this seems familiar. That feeling of abuse seems so familiar. I mean, I grew up with two parents that did not abuse me overtly, but of course, my father was very stressed out all the time, and that feeling of being ignored, of not good enough, was always on the surface for me. So think about those emotions that are constantly being re-stimulated, because as much as I'd love to say that those people in my adult life are responsible for all of it, I do have to say that my upbringing had a little bit to do with it. What do you think?
Yeah, I was one of three children. I was the middle child, and I was the intellectually, I had learning problems, I had knee problems, I had health problems. So I was the one that was different. And so they just sort of said, let's let him go. I mean, we've got two other ones that have potential, let him go. So from the early
hedge your bets.
Right. And so let him go. And they did. I mean, and so when I went into that toxic work environment, it was like, they're going to throw me out of this family, which is called the United States Army. That's my feeling. I'm getting thrown out of a family that I've actually done pretty well. And I'm a lieutenant colonel. I've got all these awards and badges.
Fantastic.
And then they say they don't give a shit. It's like, I don't give a shit of what you've done or what you can do. You're out of here. I'm going to get you anyway. Either be pedophile, if I would have stayed in South Korea, there would be another event that would occur. I guarantee you. And it would just be another, it might be sexual harassment. It might be this or that. If it's going to be something. And so, but yeah, I felt probably it was being thrown away from the family that I had, gone through, which was.
So the wounds. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have to be honest with ourselves. I mean, we're here on planet Earth. We're like bumping into each other. We're causing each other trauma, drama. Everything we see on the world stage, everything we see at the, micro and macro level is some kind of wound, unhealed wound in the collective that needs to heal. I have this background because that's where I grew up. That little place called Washington, D.C., let me tell you, Yeah, that's gonna be, and I'm gonna have to tell all. But what it does for you though, it builds resilience, wouldn't you say? Because you would have never been the person you are had you not gone through those experiences. Because being an outcast, and I'm not saying that's what you are, but that feeling of being an outcast, being part of, and I was one of three, I was the baby, and they were like, you know what? She's just crazy. They couldn't figure it out. So they just, threw some labels on me and never said, let's figure out why she's feeling she's behaving this way. But again, you people have the power now in their adult life. It would be great to, point the finger every day at someone. But what it takes courage though, wouldn't you say? I mean, would you just say the emotional journey you had was more than the, being deployed as a combat soldier? That's harder. And that's why I think people go into mercenary work after they retire from the military, because they just don't want to feel the pain. There is emotional pain there that is unprecedented. You go out there, you focus on the enemy, you got a gun, you're like, oh, I'm going to take you. But to actually look at the enemy within, right? That could be another book you write. To look
Yeah.
at the enemy within,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
The emotions that were like making you feel anxiety and paranoia. You were talking about, you were paralyzed. Somebody is coming at you. Those are the true adversaries, wouldn't you say? Wouldn't you say also that the difference between those people that come back and survive and thrive in their life versus those people who collapse and self-destruct goes back to that original experience way back in the whatever childhood it was, or as a young person?
Yeah, you have to get the courage to go and figure out what's going on and to unleash it and to vomit it up. And when I was writing that first book, it put me in the hospital because I was going through a vomiting process of all of my crazy ass stories in the Army. And I'm thinking, do I have enough courage to put this out? And
Right.
it landed me in the hospital because of the damn book, that first book, So A Soldier Against All Odds. But that built me up to create other books, which I've got 3 out now. And so I can see myself doing more literature in the future with any other topic, any topic I can write about. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And we can't wait to hear all about those other books too. And as you keep, hopefully you've left the vomit behind and now you're just like, healing with your words. But again, even at this point in the journey, one must not be afraid to continue digging deeper to inspire, because before you can inspire somebody else, you need to be able to inspire yourself, because I need to be able to say, I'm proud of myself for surviving what I had to survive, and not wait for the accolades or the applause. You got a bronze medal. Congratulations on that. But before that is accomplished, you've got to say, I am such a badass for surviving what I had to survive, because anyone I know that would have gone through what you have gone through probably wouldn't have survived it. So that said, you should give yourself
Yeah.
great applause. That said,
Yeah. Yeah.
audience, but go
Yeah.
ahead.
Yeah, I went to my high school reunion, 40th high school reunion, which was in South Carolina, and people had known about the book, and they're just like, "Man, you're badass, you're badass." They were
Yes,
saying
you are.
that, and
You
so
are.
that built me up, and to have my hometown folks, hey man, we like it, we like it. So that was good. Yeah.
And sometimes, the journey can be so tumultuous, so, problematic, filled with obstacles. It's definitely for a reason. It's definitely for a reason, because you would have never been Lieutenant Colonel Jason Pike had you stayed in that little town and not had the inspiration to leave and go serve your country outside these borders. And I say thank you to you and all your fellow soldiers for having the courage, within and without, to inspire us. And for me, it's been such a delight speaking to you again. Do you have any final words and encouragement and tips for people going through the situation right now?
I write blogs. I have a website, jasonpike.org, and I write blog sites out. I've got my books on there, and you can see a lot of inspirational messages that I put out through jasonpike.org. That would be one. Audio, if you don't, I'm not a great reader, and so audio, if you can hear it from the horse's mouth on that first book and the third book. And so, yeah, and I'll be coming out with a fourth book. It's going to be a sensitive topic. It's going to be about the white trash, where there's a lot of white trash that's in the South, and it's sensitive, I know, and the publisher doesn't like that term, but We're going to address the poverty part of the South and probably throughout America with the white culture. Yeah.
Yeah, it is a mindset. And I was talking to you earlier about, I'm calling out Black people, Black women especially, because I feel that I've survived them because the majority of the trauma I've had as a result of Black women. And I'm from a little country called Haiti. We're filled with Black people. So why I'm not going to focus outside my race when I've had, issues in my own household. You got to air out your dirty laundry before you can take out anyone else. And I'm not on a mission to destroy anyone, but I am on a mission to liberate myself. So set myself free from the trauma. So I encourage everyone to go to Jason's blog and books and website. And if you need, I would love to hear what your experience was. If there are any veterans listening to this, please let me know what your experience has been. We're here for you. We love you so much. We thank you so much for serving this country on a Frankly Speaking with Sendra D podcast. I was today with Lieutenant Colonel Jason Pike. Well, thank you so much for all you've done and continue to do. We'll have you again on another episode as soon as the next book. I mean, you keep me busy. You keep me busy. So you're saying, oh, this one's barely released, and you're like, I'm gonna do a fourth book, and I'm like, okay. But yeah, it's been a pleasure and always an honor to speak with you. Any final thoughts?
That's it. You did a great job.
Thank you so much, sir. I'll speak to you soon.
All righty.
Oh, and don't forget, subscribe to Frankly Speaking with Sendra D's podcast and join us every week as we uncover the stories of those who triumphed over life-altering challenges to achieve not just financial success, but a richer, a deeper, a more altruistic life. It's about time we redefine what it means to be a truly affluent individual. Don't you agree? So come and join me. And let's be unstoppable on this journey called life. Because here, affluence isn't just a buzzword. It's a path to waking up to your authentic being.